on, everyone? It's the Hub City Hoops Talk podcast. I'm Austin Massey. He's Jacob Harris. Guys, Texas Tech just blew Kansas out at home. 29-point win, Jacob. I'm so excited to go over this win today with you guys. But as always, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're getting super close to 200 subscribers. Any support you can give helps. Jacob, where do we even start, man? Do we start with the Daren Williams 100% field goal percentage kind of effort? Where do we start here?
I mean, you can start with Daddy Darion going off for 30 burger. I mean, that was probably the best individual performance I think we've seen out of a Red Raider in I don't know how long. I mean, that was insane. The dude couldn't miss.
Couldn't miss. I mean, Daren Williams has always been he's a high upside guy, and he's still kind of finding his bearings because he's I think that for McCaslin, he's such a versatile player. It's like, how do I utilize this guy to his fullest capabilities, right? Because he can pass, he can shoot, he can rebound, he does everything. He's probably Tech's best defender. But I really liked what they did yesterday. I don't think they were necessarily like, giving him the ball as like not really like a point guard, but they were letting him operate the ball at the top of the key and kind of work the offense and facilitate. And so you actually saw Daren Williams throw a couple alley-oops to Warren Washington yesterday, a couple of really good, just high-level passes. You know who else has been passing pretty well is Robert Jennings. He's had a couple good passes the last few games. Obviously, Pop Isaacs is really coming on as a passer. That one play last night, I think it was in the second half, where Pop threw that one-handed kind of like a low baseline pass to Chance McMillan cutting to the basket. I mean, that was just an incredible play overall. Chance McMillan with an acrobatic left-handed finish at the basket. And then, I mean, they showed the replay on the pass, and just a one-handed laser just right in between the defenders. But so much to talk about really with this one. But let's just start with the implications of the win. You know what I mean? Because like that was a huge win. Oh, yeah. I think, we're getting to the point where it's like every game I feel like it's a must win, right? And I'm like, man, Texas Tech has to win this game. It could be a resume kind of defining win. This was exactly that. I mean, we took a look at the analytics, and they have Texas Tech essentially shot up anywhere from 10 to 17 points on all the analytics sites. The net, they went up 12. BPI, they went up several spots. Strength of schedule at several spots. So this was a tournament-defining win for them, Jacob. Talk to me about kind of your thoughts there.
I agree with you 100%. Now the pressure's, I mean, not necessarily off when you go into Ames on Saturday, but there's definitely less pressure to go get that one because you've already had this incredible win this week that, like you said, between 10 and 15, you increase in most of these, analytical rankings, which is insane for one win. But yeah, I mean, it kind of changes things. You lost 3 in a row. I think most maybe expected you to lose, 4 out of your 5. They didn't really expect Kansas to come in here and lose. But they did. And man, now it looks like you could go and win 12, 13 conference games if you get on a run here. I mean, Iowa State's obviously probably going to be the toughest game left on your schedule, and they're coming up next. And then after that, you get, UCF on the road, Texas at home. You get a bunch of home games, and your remaining road games after that don't look as daunting. You have West Virginia on the road and Oklahoma State on the road as well. But I mean, you're right. This is a seeding defining win where you could look at resumes in March and kind of look at it and be like, well, this win could even promote them a seed line, instead of being the 7-8, they could be in the 5-6 range now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I follow several of the bracketologist guys on Twitter, and pretty much I think the general consensus right now is they're anywhere from a 5 to a 7 seed. I think 7 seeds kind of on the lower end. The average kind of seeding that I'm seeing right now is around a 6, but put it this way, if Texas Tech drops this game, I mean, it's not only the implications from an analytics standpoint are pretty significant. I mean, obviously Texas Tech, I think, was a slight underdog according to Ken Palm and Bart Torvik. Very slight. It was like a half a point or something. But the analytical kind of implications here are massive. But also, that's another Q1 win for Texas Tech. it probably will end up going down as a Q1A win as well. I think Kansas actually dropped out of the top 15 of the net because of they got beat so bad, but wouldn't surprise me if they finish in the top 15 of the net. If they do finish in the top 15 of the net, that would be considered a Q1A win for Texas Tech, which is kind of like the elite of the elite wins that the committee is going to be looking at. Essentially, they break it down Q1A, Q1B, and then just overall Q1, Q2 records, things like that. Plus all the analytics. So this was a monumental win for them. Like I said, Texas Tech loses here, they could be sliding down to an 8, 9, 9 seed probably. So huge win. And then let's just go over the game itself, Jacob. I mean, obviously Texas Tech came out pretty hot in the first half shooting. But then, I mean, we talked about it a little bit off the air, but in the second half, I mean, Texas Tech went 2 of 12 from 3-point, yet, they were still able to win this game by 29 points.
Yeah, I think they shifted more into a defensive mindset in the second half, which worked out very, very well for them. I feel like they pressed to get outside shots less. They like you said at the beginning, they let Daren Williams kind of really work in that top key free throw area, and he got a lot of running shots kind of towards the lane. He did hit 4 outside shots, which was insane. But I mean, besides that, you were looking to drive the ball a lot. Obviously, Hunter Dickinson didn't have a great game, and I think you really tried to attack him and KJ Adams towards the end of that game, and I think it worked out in your favor because by the end of the game, Kansas had no answer for anything you did.
Yeah, it's a good point. Actually went and looked at Bart Torvik, and according to the analytics, that was Texas Tech's best defensive performance of the year, at least against Power 5 competition. Texas, I don't know if you remember, but Texas Tech opened up the season. They held Texas A&M Commerce to 46 points, and then they held San Jose State to 42 points. So obviously those two, the analytics loved those defensive performances. But in terms of, the games against teams with the pulse, this was by far Texas Tech's best defensive performance. It's not even really close, actually. I'm looking here. They're kind of their closest, second in line would be that home or the away game against Texas, where they pulled off that kind of upset road victory. But even then, this was a elite defensive performance, and then it was just such a balanced performance. I think that's what really stood out to me. I thought that McCaslin had a really good game plan for kind of keeping Dickinson out of the paint. I think that, when you really look at Kansas, like they do not shoot the 3 well. They don't really have other than Furphy. I mean, Timberlake was kind of shooting the 3 well last night, which is a rarity for how he's been this year. But you don't really have to worry about them from the outside. It almost felt like at points Tech was just leaving, DeJuan Harris wide open, leaving Hunter Dickinson wide open. Obviously, they weren't giving Furphy much space, but the game plan was to kind of front Dickinson. I think they did bring a couple doubles at a couple points, but really they just were very physical with Dickinson, which is like really the only way you can stop that guy. I mean, I've watched Kansas play several times this season, and he is very good at kind of just navigating his way into the lower paint, even without the ball in his hands. He sets himself up really well position-wise. And then he just has a little dump off, a couple foot bucket. And he's very good around the basket. Last night, he was rattled with Texas Tech's physicality. I think there was a fan that put out a tweet kind of showing Dickinson, kind of some cheap shots to Robert Jennings and to Warren Washington. And I think that was just pure frustration. And I think that that's a big testament to the game plan, but also how about freaking Robert Jennings, man? I mean, he is a sophomore. And he really stood his ground, from a physicality standpoint with Hunter Dickinson. Well, and it just feels like Robert Jennings he is on the, kind of on the up and up for Texas Tech. What are your thoughts with his kind of, recent developments?
A month ago, I really thought maybe you should give another person a chance to take that backup 5 spot. But now, holy crap, it's like night and day. He played so well last night. In moments where, it looks like Washington tweaked his ankle or something. Obviously, he came back in, but those were big minutes because there were still 11, 12 minutes left in the game, and you were up 20-ish. But you could see a Kansas comeback if Robert Jennings doesn't play well. And you were right. He stood his ground. He played excellent defense on Dickinson. It made him really hard to catch the ball. And when he did catch the ball, game plan wise, they did a very good job of bringing somebody down to kind of pressure him from the other side.
Yeah.
And that led to a lot of either bad shots or missed shots. They did a very good job boxing out last night as a team. Dickinson held to only 2 offensive rebounds, and they were both on the same possession, where I think he should have been called for a foul for pushing Rob Jennings in the back.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he played so good last night. If he could continue to play at that level, I think that exponentially increases where this team could finish this season.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm looking here at Robert Jennings' stats just, over the last – it looks like he really started to kind of pick up minutes right around that Cincinnati game. And obviously Warren was dealing with the flu and stuff like that. But he had a conference high. So in terms of Big 12 play, he had his most minutes in Big 12 play against Kansas. He had 20 minutes last night. His other highs were 16 minutes against Cincinnati and Baylor. But looking at, ever since he kind of entered the rotation truly, he's actually leading the team in offensive rebound percentage. So that's something to keep an eye on. His defensive rebound percentage numbers aren't quite where you'd like them to be. I think the thing that he's doing so well though, is he is boxing out, he's being physical. And then you have your guards, like it's so good to see Texas Tech's guards jumping for rebounds and just showing some enthusiasm on that end of the floor. It's like, it almost is like a light bulb went off for this team, right? Like, hey, we gotta like, Texas Tech does feel like a team to me that really gets up for the bigger moments, but maybe against like lesser opponents, they could fall asleep a little bit and kind of, they just don't, that's what it felt like with Cincinnati for me and UCF as well. It felt like they were very asleep those games. But let's look at the big, like, key games this year. BYU, they had a tough start to the game, but they came back and played incredible. Texas, they went on the road and smoked Texas. I mean, that's looking like a really good win right now because Texas is playing good ball. They went on the road and beat Oklahoma, and that one it was a little bit iffy. But last night, I mean, that was Texas Tech's best performance of the year for all 40 minutes by far. And what was so impressive is they did it on a night where they shot 2 of 12 from 3 in the second half, like you said. So it's just, if this team can, find a way to keep that level of consistency with their physicality, with their defense, I mean, the sky is really the limit. I think that is when you really look at the core kind of problems with Texas Tech when they've, maybe been exposed or lost some games. It's always originated kind of on the glass and then on the defensive side of the ball. For Texas Tech they didn't just beat Kansas on the glass, they obliterated them. I mean, it was not even close. I mean, 42-26 was the total rebounding. I mean, that's just insane. They held Kansas to 33% from the field. Another crazy stat, tweeted about this last night, but they held Kansas to 0 second chance points for the entire game. And when you're playing Hunter Dickinson, that's pretty incredible of a stat. Yeah. That guy is a elite rebounder, and he is really good around the rim once he catches an offensive rebound. So for Texas Tech to kind of shut that side of their game down, obviously Kansas didn't have McCullough. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. If anything, the crowd would have just been more riled up. Texas Tech's going to win this game regardless. Kansas has obviously, some serious flaws. Their performance seems to really decline kind of away from Fog Allen. But imagine that. And another thing just to point out, guys, is like Texas Tech, beats Kansas by a historical amount. I mean, it's their worst loss to an unranked team in 60 years or something, or maybe even longer, 70 years. And Pop Isaacs went 1 of 9 from the field. Joe Toussaint went 2 of 9 from the field. Kerwin Walton went 2 of 7 from the field. And Chance McMillan went 3 of 8 from the field. I mean, that's incredible. It's like, obviously Daren Williams putting together one of the best analytical performances of the last 25 years.
Absolutely.
Doesn't hurt. But I mean, for this team to be able to win, Jacob, and just win without their 2 best guards, neither of their 2 best guards put up over 10 points. For them to be able to win this game, it says so much about this team.
It does. I think that versatility is going to be needed going down the stretch. I mean, if Daren Williams can continue to blossom into this kind of star, like watch out because now you
Yeah.
have Pop Isaacs that can drop 30 at any point. Darion Williams who just dropped 30. I mean, Warren Washington is gonna get you a solid, anywhere between 8 and 15. Toussaint might not help you a ton in the scoring department, but he's gonna be a distributor. Chance McMillan's gonna come off the bench and get you 10. I mean, I know he didn't have a great night either last night, but I mean, shooting wise, defensively, I thought everybody played very, very well. But I mean, yeah, I mean, at any point, any one of these guys can just go off, and that's what this program has been missing for the last few years.
Yeah, and I'm looking here. So over the last 3 games, guys, Darian Williams is averaging 20 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
So he put up 17 against Baylor. He was probably the best player against Baylor. For Texas Tech. He put up 13 points against UCF, and then 30 points against Kansas. He also has had double doubles in his last 2 games. He's also got like a 4.0 assist to turnover ratio the last couple of games. So I mean, the guy is he does it all. And I love what Texas Tech is doing with their offense. I'm the one thing I will say that was a little bit concerning last night. It just feels like Joe Toussaint is I don't know what's going on. He got so off balance at so many times last night, and it just really out of
Yeah,
control with his ball handling. And that's a little concerning for me. I think that this team, they just really have to be cautious about turnovers. Thankfully, last night it didn't matter. They actually ended up being had a pretty clean game turnover wise, but
I think
going on
the
the
number was
road,
8.
8, yeah, which is, I mean, we'll take that any day of the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So will Grant McCaslin. But
Yeah,
you're about to go on the road and play Iowa State against, a defense who's probably up there with Houston in terms of how good they are from an efficiency standpoint, and then also just their scheme and their overall kind of their roster and the way that team is deployed defensively. It's going to be a really tough game. So keep an eye on turnovers against Iowa State. They have to play a clean game. Joe Toussaint cannot be out of control. And then Pop, I mean, that was the one thing last night about Pop. I thought he had a pretty rough game shooting again. He's on a little bit of a slump. He seems to be getting blocked a lot around the rim and things like that. He still has to learn to get a little bit more creative with his attacking and things like that. But the one thing he did so well was just his passing, man. I mean, I don't know if you caught on to that in the second half,
oh
Jacob,
yeah,
but he really, I mean, he had 3 assists in the first half, 2 in the second half, but his ability, just to kind of make things happen. And he's getting better and better. I can think of that. I think it was in the second half where Pop drove it to the rim. He got kind of closed out pretty good. Kansas is a good defensive team. He didn't have a shooting lane once he got to the rim. So he kind of like hooked it around and swung it outside to Daren Williams. And then Daren Williams just drilled the 3. That was a play for me where I was like, man, this is what Pop Isaacs needs to do because defenses have to respect him. The one thing that I will say is he gets blocked a lot, but that's because a lot of the times the defenses are collapsing on him in the paint. So for him to be able to kind of, poke the ball out to the outside to your shooters, to Kerwin, to Darian, Chance, that is going to be a game changer for Texas Tech.
absolutely. I think he's developed as a point guard so much this year. I mean, honestly, going into this year, I thought maybe he was better suited to play the 2.
Yeah.
Going forward. But no, I think he's become a better distributor of the basketball than Joe Toussaint. I think he's got more control of the offense. Obviously, I don't know what's going on with Joe.
Yeah.
He's a worker, he's a grinder. He relies on physicality in his game, and if he's not going to get a lot of foul calls like he did kind of earlier in the conference season, then his game is not going to be as effective. I think part of the reason he's getting calls is because, like you said, he's coming in a lot really unbalanced and uncoordinated.
Yeah.
And it just looks like you can see with some of his drives, you can just see teams even like taking a step back because of how out of control he is. And I think that's why he gets, turns the ball over a lot in the paint. Last night he did have a couple of plays. He literally threw it directly to DeJuan Harris at one point. that led to an easy layup. And I think he'll break out of it. I mean, obviously he played very well against Baylor. He played pretty good against UCF, and he didn't have a terrible game last night. Shooting wise, wasn't great. He had that one costly turnover, but defensively, I think he's still playing pretty okay. And I think he's still probably one of your best 5 out there.
Yeah, I mean, the one positive for him offensively was he did shoot it 2 of 4 from 3. I think that he's been struggling pretty. I mean, it felt like he started the season off so hot from deep. I mean, we were like, wow, like maybe
Yeah.
this is actually going to be part of his game. He's never really been known to be more than like a 33 kind of percentage 3-point shooter. But it seems like he's kind of come back to reality. But again, I mean, it's not like it's just Joe struggling. I mean, Pop is struggling as of late too. He struggled against UCF from the field, and 1 of 6 from 3 last night from Pop. I mean, he Pop took some bad shots last night. I think that's like the one thing offensively that Pop and Joe have to really try to resist is they'll once the shot clock starts to dwindle down to 8 seconds. That's when those guys can they're pretty prone to taking, crazy shots. That's kind of where I think you gotta, I don't know, Texas Tech just has to have a little bit more, just in more kind of enthusiasm almost earlier in the shot clock, because getting down to that 5-second range of the play clock, that's where bad things happen. Pop was taking beyond NBA range 3-point shots last night. They weren't really working out. I think airballed one, hit the front of the rim on another. What I want to see Pop doing is take those threes, but take them earlier in the shot clock whenever he's so good at creating space from his defenders with his ball handling. And I feel like that's when he's best shooting. I don't think he's really at his best shooting when he's having to force a shot up. But I don't know. Just I would hope for Pop and Joe to be a little bit more selective with their 3-point shots moving forward, particularly Pop. And then Chance McMillan has been struggling a little bit from 3 lately and just for scoring in general. But hey, those guys are struggling kind of as of late, but Texas Tech's still finding a way to win games. Who would have thought, looking at this team, Jacob, that the front court would actually be winning this team games?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I'm really impressed with how the two of them, being Washington and Williams, have really held up without really very much behind them. I mean, you have Robert Jennings coming off the bench, and he plays the 5. I mean, Lamar Washington didn't get very much run last night, but you've seen him come in at the 4. So yeah, it's crazy to see those two just hold up to 30+ minutes of play every night in the Big 12 and still be as efficient and as impactful as they are.
Yeah, it's going to be something to keep an eye on with Warren. He did tweak his foot last night, I think everyone kind of saw. Pop also took a pretty bad knee to his knee area, it looked like, from KJ Adams. That's another thing, man. Texas Tech did such a good job on KJ Adams, too. I think he's a guy that really worried me. I did think that Daren Williams could handle him because Daren Williams is just so freaking good. I feel pretty confident you could match him up on pretty much any team's 4-man in the country, and he's going to do a pretty good job on them defensively. He's physical for only being a sophomore. He's pretty stocky, for being 6'8". He's got the strength that he needs to kind of maintain stuff in the low block defensively. But man, they held KJ Adams in check, and I want to say on the broadcast last night they said that KJ Adams had one of the highest field goal percentages in the Big 12. Over 60% or something like that.
Yeah, he did. He shot 1 of 10 last night, which tells you exactly what you need to know about Daren Williams and how he played defense last night.
Yep. And they did a good job. Like KJ Adams, he had a couple, I think he had that little alley-oop kind of off the glass thing that he had early in the game. But other than that, all of his shots were uncomfortable. They were outside of his normal range. A couple of shots for KJ Adams, he was trying to hit little bank shots off the glass from further out than you would like to see. You know what I mean? Those are shots you want to be, well in within the paint for. But Texas Tech just did such a good job. And again, it's where has this physicality been all conference play, right? It's been pretty spotty, I guess, to say the best. But if Texas Tech can keep rebounding at this level and keep the biggest thing for me is keep up the physical intensity. If they can do that, they have a chance to compete with Iowa State on the road. They really do. The thing about Iowa State, though, is if you're going to go there and beat them, you have to be flawless. You can't turn the ball over. You can't take stupid shots. And you got to stay composed. I mean, I watched that Iowa State TCU game, and TCU had a couple of chances. They came back a couple of times from relatively larger deficits, but the one thing that Iowa State continued to do was just they were so disciplined offensively. So look for Texas Tech. If they're going to win this game, they have to be extremely disciplined. They need to be right around 8 to 7 turnovers on the game probably.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, they're going to have to shoot the three. They're going to have to shoot the three well. So, Kerwin Walton, Chance McMillian, those guys are going to have to step up big. Daren Williams too. I just saw for the season, he doesn't shoot a ton of threes, but he's actually up over 40% on the year from three too, which is pretty bizarre. I mean, he usually only takes about 3-pointers a game. But man, so impressed with that kid. He is going to be an all Big 12 player next season. And he's just going to continue to get better. I mean, this is a Mountain West Freshman Conference Player of the Year last year, or Freshman of the Year, I should say. And this is a kid who's playing in his first Big 12 season. Super underrated. A lot to look forward to with him. I mean, you could argue that there's a chance he may be the best player on the team next year,
Yes,
depending on who Texas Tech gets in the portal. But a couple of I guess concerning things in the Kansas game, but overall best performance of Texas Tech season so far. Their best defensive performance. They were very good offensively. They crushed Kansas on the boards. So a lot of good stuff to look forward to. And then Jacob, real quick, looking ahead at the Iowa State game, what are some key things that we need to see from Texas Tech to get the win?
Like you said, shoot the ball, don't turn it over. Play some solid defense, and hope and pray that there's no Hilton Magic on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be – what time is the game at, by the way?
11 a.m.
11 a.m. Well, that may actually benefit Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think it would.
Fans a little sleepy, maybe not as drunk as normal as their usual 5 p.m. games. But, yeah, guys, a lot to look forward to. Absolutely massive win. They blew Kansas out. Hunter Dickinson had 5 points. He shot at 2 of 12 from the field. Bill Self got ejected. Kevin McCullough didn't play, but he even got his own little chant going and rubbed some Kansas fans the wrong way. But man, what a like a weekend kind of, I guess, big Monday yesterday, but Patrick Mahomes winning the Super Bowl. Texas Tech's obviously been 2-0 in their last 2 games. Protected home court like they had to. I mean, Jacob, if Texas Tech loses these last 2 games, all of a sudden, things are getting scary, right? Like they're firmly on the bubble, but they took care of business. If they would have beaten Cincinnati, man, they would probably be close to a 3 or 4 seed right now, which is crazy to think about. But nevertheless, everyone seems to be healthy again from the flu, at least. Let's wait and see what happens with Warren Washington. But the guys do get several days off until their next game. But as always, guys, Jacob, thanks for joining today, man. Hit that subscribe button, guys. Hit the like button. And yeah, we'll talk to you for the Iowa State preview.